This video is produced for entertainment purposes only. All credit to the author of this novel, Shui Qian Chen. The following spoilers are from the novel, and the series will differ. So don't expect all of this in the series. If you want to read the novel, then visit patreon.com/blspoilers. The link will be in the description. Don't forget to like, comment, and tell us how we can improve. Enjoy. Let's start with the video. Chapter 56. Summary. Joe carefully moved away from Ming's embrace and laid her on the sofa, covering her with a blanket. It was 4 a.m. and he needed to leave before it got too bright. He took a taxi to his old neighborhood. He entered the building through a remote back door and made his way up to their condo, using a spare key he had hidden. Inside, the condo looked just as he had left it. He quickly ransacked the bedroom and study to make it look like a burglary had occurred. His goal was to create confusion and hinder the investigation into his theft. After less than 10 minutes, he left the condo and returned home. The next day, Joe and Ying went to the hospital to receive the results of Ying's medical tests. They were informed that Ying had uremia, a serious kidney condition. However, as long as Ying undergoes regular dialysis, she can prolong her life. Unfortunately, the cost of treatment is high, and Ying's medical insurance has been depleted. Joe felt desperate, as he had no money to support Ying's medical treatments. Ying, on the other hand, decided not to undergo treatment, not wanting to burden Joe. However, Joe refused to accept this and did everything he could to convince Ying to get treated. Joe then asked if Ying had any medical insurance or similar that could be used. Ying shook her head, having used up her medical insurance after her husband's death and Joe's hospitalization. Joe racked his brain to think of ways to make money, but there was nothing. In the end, Joe was left with no choice but to contemplate his next move. He couldn't ask Woot for money, as he couldn't pay him back. He also couldn't ask Sol, as he didn't want to take advantage of their friendship. Joe felt trapped, with no one to turn to for help. Chapter 57. Summary. Joe secretly had his kidney tested for compatibility with Ying's, despite his fears of the surgery and Ying's potential rejection. He feels a responsibility to help Ying, as the youngster whose body he now inhabits is her son. Back at home, Joe cooks noodles for Ying, who has just returned from a long and grueling dialysis treatment. She can only bring herself to eat half a bowl. Joe urges Ying to continue with her treatments, which will now be twice a week. Joe decides to hire a caretaker to accompany Ying to her treatments, as he cannot miss work and fears Ying will refuse to go without him. He thinks of a potential caretaker, an auntie who has shown enthusiasm and strength. However, he realizes that their current apartment is too small for another person. Joe is overwhelmed by the financial burden of hiring a caretaker and continuing Ying's treatments. He decides to call the caretaker the next day. Joe's money troubles consume him, and he fears that he will not have enough to support Ying's treatments and living expenses for more than a few months. He considers asking his friend Woot for a loan, but worries about burdening him. He also considers asking President Wang for help, but realizes this would only solve his immediate needs. Joe is at a loss for how to obtain more money. Suddenly, Joe considers asking Ming for help. Joe now weighs his pride against Ying's life. He decides to ask Woot for a loan first, and then ask President Wang for additional help. With this money, he could support Ying's treatments until the end of the year. Joe's phone rings, interrupting his thoughts. It is Woot, who offers him 250,000 Thai bahts and promises to ask President Wang for more help. Joe is grateful but feels guilty for accepting such a large sum of money from Woot. He stays in the kitchen for a long time, feeling a sense of security in the small space. Assistant Jim calls, and Joe answers, expecting it to be Woot. Instead, Ming's voice comes through the phone. Ming demands that Joe come to his place immediately. Joe makes excuses, but Ming insists, causing Joe to become irritated and hang up the phone. Joe feels a deep hatred for Ming, blaming him for his current situation. He wishes that all memories of Ming would disappear from his life. Chapter 58. Summary. The next morning, Joe called Aunt Wang to care for Ying and take her to the hospital twice a week. They agreed on a payment of 400 Thai bahts each time she comes. Joe couldn't afford a full-time caretaker due to limited money, so he had to find ways to make more money. Woot gave Joe a bank card with 250,000 Thai bahts to help with urgent needs. He warned Joe not to tell others in the company about it. Joe felt overwhelmed with the tasks waiting for him and the need to make more money. Woot advised Joe to be strong and not to be discouraged about the future. Joe felt he owed Woot too much and couldn't reveal his big secret. Woot's expression was deep as he warned Joe not to get too close to Ming. Joe met with Jim, who warned him about Ming's unusual background and advised him not to provoke him. Joe was not worried about Ming's reaction to hanging up on him. Jim suspected that Ming had fallen for Joe, despite not understanding why. Joe arrived at Ming's upscale neighborhood and felt nervous about the meeting. Jim led him to Ming's apartment, where Ming coldly invited him in. Joe couldn't suppress his nervousness as Ming dragged him inside. If you want to read the novel, then visit patreon.com/blspoilers. The link will be in the description. Special thanks to my legendary supporters, Kiara Russell, Rebecca, Anne, Brian Stargell, Chelsea 212, Suzanne 233, Tamara Coomer, Ems T, Maria Lalbakan, Sharon Fong, Martina Bosinkova, S. Armstrong, P. Pri, Ed.